All right. Ryan Moresby-White, welcome to the podcast.
Moresby-White.
Moresby.
Yeah.
Moresby-White, welcome to the podcast. This has got to be the quickest. Do you want to do a podcast to then doing it that I think I've ever gone through? I messaged you, 2 hours ago, and now straight into it. You're down here at the moment, you're doing a few podcasts and kind of, are you so much sharing your story or your wisdom of like how you've got to being in the space of helping men deal with their trauma?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. I like to teach a lot around the wounded inner boy and how that stems and how men experience those core wounds in childhood that then lead to the disconnect that they experience in relationships and in their business. And so for the most part, it's a bit of both. It's kind of mixing my journey and my story within actually teaching something and giving someone a framework to actually walk away with, especially on a podcast. So, yeah.
Were you a wounded boy or were you dive straight into the trauma while it's there? Like, was that something that you felt that then you wanted to heal from, and then once you got the tools to heal, you wanted to heal other people?
Yeah, I was definitely a wounded boy. Look, we all have wounds. No one escaped childhood without a few cuts. And in the personal development space, personal development world, like all roads lead back to childhood. And for me, the wounded inner boy is close to my heart because it's been my journey that I've been through. But it's where the biggest growth happens for men is when they really lean into healing the little boy within them. Because all of our trauma, most of our trauma that we experience is actually based on the love we did or didn't receive in childhood, which then leads us to create the identity that we've formed for ourselves today. And then the unprocessed emotions of the unmet needs of the wounded inner boy is how men are out there in the world seeking to have their needs met through either creating success or seeking to be held by a woman or struggling to open their heart in relationships, or the disconnects of the anxious and avoidant in relationship, and how these triggers and these wounds show up in relationships mostly. I mostly focus on how men experience this disconnect within themselves in relationship, because that's typically the biggest pain point for most men. Reason being is because they have this person right in front of them that's a direct mirror and reflection back of their unhealed, unprocessed wounds. And yeah, relationships is where the boy comes out mostly. So that's what I mostly focus on. But those inner child wounds, most men don't realize how much it's actually holding them back or limiting them or affecting them in their business as well. And in, let's say, like, I know your background's with a lot of, professional athletes, and that's what this podcast was about to begin with. So I know, and then me being in that world previously, I know a lot of that is driven from the unconscious need to prove. And that's my biggest passion, because that was my journey. It was this need to prove myself. Yeah. And then that turned to burnout and depression and me almost taking my life. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy the traumas that you have as a kid and the things that you're doing. You don't really understand the why as a kid, but then obviously as you grow up, you go, oh, I was doing that because I had a chip on my shoulder, or I wanted to prove myself to family, friends, whoever it may be. Like, I talk about it all the time and I'll brush over it real quickly, but I started this podcast because I was terrified of speaking in public or speaking in front of people. I always felt like I would stutter or mess my words up. So there's so much fulfillment and excitement that comes from like beating trauma. And then you say when you're like competing, I know I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder because growing up, my parents were pretty well off. And then people would always say, oh, you're only good at this because your parents are well off. So I think I even subconsciously picked something that was such an individual sport that if I did well in it, there's no one else there. Like, you can't say you did well because of your mum or your dad or your brother or your family. It's like there's one person racing down that hill and that's you. So it's all on you, which adds a lot of pressure. But then when you can pull it off, it's like, well, no one else did this. It was all me. But I can understand how you can it's like subconsciously go after things and not even understand why. Like, how often do you see people in either relationships or business go after something, but they haven't actually figured out their why to why they're actually doing it? And it's not till you dig a little bit deeper, you're like, oh, there's trauma in this.
Yeah. This typically shows up in people's inability to set boundaries in relationships, because they don't know what it is that they truly want or need, because they haven't actually explored their wounds or their triggers, or they don't know what they need when they are triggered, or what they need in order to feel safe and secure in this relationship. There's three things we need in relationship to feel safe. And love is actually just a byproduct of these three things. And that's, first of all, safety, trust, and respect. And then love is just a byproduct. And when we know what it is that we need to feel safe in relationship, what it is that we need to feel respected and to feel trust, then we can set boundaries. But for the most part, most people are so disconnected from themselves that they don't even know what they want or need in relationship, let alone actually communicate that. And then a disconnect happens, and it's like you have no idea what you need in order to come back to safety and repair. And then typically this is just like the downward spiral. And for the most part, like I said, all roads lead back to childhood. So this is where the core wounding really begins to come out. I work with a lot of like high-level CEOs, executives, business owners, celebrities as well. And yeah, I see them. I typically work with people who've created a level of success for themselves and then realize it wasn't the thing. And for the most part, it was because of that little boy within that was actually seeking to fulfill his needs in the world. In childhood, when we don't get our core basic needs met, we are stuck in survival. We be and become whoever we need to be in order to get our core needs met. And
did you feel that when you were younger? Absolutely.
I didn't know I was feeling it because what I thought was love was actually disconnect. And that's the thing, a lot of people will say, I had an incredible childhood. Things were great. So did I. I was like, things were amazing. I raced motocross. I went to a great school. Like I had everything provided to me. Like I always had dinner, had a roof over my head. Like things were good. But beneath that was the emotional disconnect between the love that I was actually seeking and needed in order to feel safe enough to be myself. And when we become disconnected from that, our whole life becomes revolved around seeking that from the world. And most men, when they're disconnected from that love, they don't receive that consistent, conscious, connected love in childhood. They then turn to seek that from typically women in the world as the representation of the feminine. So a lot of work I do is around the mother wound, which is the feminine wound. So when we're welcomed into the world, we seek to be welcomed and nourished and nurtured into the world, where we need a regulated mother that reflects back to us that all of us is okay. We are welcome, and that she's okay within herself, and she's not anxious, she's not fearful. Otherwise, she projects that into this child. And when a boy grows up with this disconnected mother, right, or he receives this inconsistent love, or he feels that his dad's not present, there's someone or something that's more important than him, typically it's work, he starts to develop this core wound of abandonment, of I now need to be and become whoever I need to be in order to get these core needs met of connection. Now, this deep core wound, the mother wound, because the mother is not just the feminine, the mother, it's the energy.
It's caring.
It's the caring energy. It's the nurturing energy, right? When a boy doesn't receive that, he'll do everything in his power to receive that, right? When those needs aren't met, that's emotional trauma that's then built up over time. And then he typically tries to seek it through women, being held, being nurtured by the feminine. Yeah.
So did you find you didn't have that love that you wanted as a child, and then in turn you try to seek that in women?
How it showed up for me was this constant need to either be in relationship or be validated by women in some sense, because that's where I got my self-worth. That's where, right, I felt I would feel good if a woman was validating me, if I was getting that reassurance that I was loved, right?
But you feel like that stemmed from not getting it from your mum or your dad.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's funny you say that, because I have the same thing, but on the flip side, I got a lot of love and affection from both my mum and my dad, But then the end result is exactly what you're saying, which is then because I got it from my mum and she was so loving and caring and gave me everything that I thought I wanted and needed, I then wanted that from other women because I got used to that. Like, women are caring, women are soft, women are all these things. So then I put them on a pedestal and they became, okay, well, this feels great. Women give me this. I want more of that. Let's get more of that. But then, like you said, it creates that same cycle of thinking you need someone or something from someone else when realistically you should have that from yourself. And the byproduct of that is someone will come into your life to reflect that, what you already have, not try and fill up what you need.
Yeah. And at the core of that, either way, if you may have received the love that you needed, and sometimes it's too much where we don't actually have the space and capacity to build a connection with our own emotional body or our own self. In childhood, there's what's called the separation phase, and what's really important is that we actually have the safe space to create that separation where we actually resist and actually move away from connection. This is where anger starts coming out. So anger is actually a really helpful and important emotion because it's our protector. And as that anger starts coming through, we create that separation in childhood, which gives us that sense of independence. But then this is when the masculine rite of passage starts coming in. The initiation for men that's been lost over thousands of years, right? Which is where between ages 7 to 14, a little boy is stripped away from his mother. The feminine, the nurturing energy. And he goes and lives with the men, or he's put through some sort of challenge that he has to overcome to really develop a sense of self, to really stand on his own 2 feet. Because think of it this way, it's like the feminine energy, you come into the world, like the umbilical cord, it's like the oxygen mask, right? And if that oxygen mask stays on, we don't learn how to breathe on our own, right? Or if we don't receive an efficient amount of oxygen, right, we fight our entire life to receive that oxygen from the feminine. Yeah, and then this is how these core wounds can happen. But for the most part, when that relationship between the boy and his mother isn't severed at some point, he's still got the oxygen mask on, and he doesn't have the capacity within himself to be in tune with his own emotional experience, to regulate or self-soothe his emotions. And the only way he knows how to do that is to be nurtured and mothered by a woman where she can take care of him. Yeah.
Yeah, man, this is hitting home. This is really hitting home because it's funny when you get to I've gotten to the point where I've tried, you know who like Paul Check is?
Yep.
He talks about the pain teacher, and you can obviously relive the same thing over and over again until the pain gets unbearable and you actually learn from it and then move on. And I've just gotten to a point now where I'm sick of doing the same thing over and over again. And it's almost worse when you know what you need to do, but then you don't do it. And then you go back and do the same thing and the same thing. And it's like, how many times are you going to touch the hot thing before you go, okay, I'm sick of burning myself? But that comes back to, like you say, like using other people as like a self-soothing, like dopamine-filled experience to then go, oh, I'm good. And then going back until it doesn't work out and go, why do I keep going in this cycle? Why do I keep doing the same thing over and over again? And it's like, well, it feels nice until it doesn't, and then it feels really shit. And that's not a consistent life to live. So what would you tell men going through that cycle of using women as this dopamine hit to soothe them and not actually getting happiness from themselves?
Yeah. Unfortunately, for the most part, it takes for a man to, hit rock bottom, or to have the woman that he cares about more than anything leave him. For the most part, it's because we're more motivated by pain than pleasure. One of my favorite quotes on this is by Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he said, we can either change from a place of pain and suffering or joy and inspiration. Yeah, so it doesn't have to get to that point. What was the question again?
What would you tell men that are using women as like a soothing mother archetype and then going through that same cycle again and again, and instead of healing themselves and finding happiness within themselves?
Yep. It's pretty. This is what I would take a client through, and it's the separation phase between him and his mum. If that hasn't occurred yet, there needs to be some sort of energetic decision of, I'm cutting ties with my mother, right? Because when a man still has that energy of his mum in his life, he'll get into a relationship and a woman won't feel safe with him because she can unconsciously feel that there's another woman that's there. And so he needs to create that separation and be really, really firm in that. So that'd be the first part. And then so there's typically two ways it goes. It's either that way, where a man hasn't created that separation with his mum, or there's been emotional disconnect between him and his mum. And typically that's where the abandonment wound is. That's where the nice guy is, the people pleaser, the one who would abandon himself in order to please his partner, keep her happy, and instead of, knowing what he wants or communicating his need. This is the guy who gets into a relationship and over time slowly stops doing the things that he used to do that actually made him happy. And he starts abandoning himself, right? This was me.
Yeah, me too, brother.
Yeah.
Me too, all the way.
Yeah, and then this is the man who loses himself in relationship because he hasn't learned how to regulate or soothe himself and be okay in his own body. And until a man can do this, he also will struggle to see the red flags and know what he needs in relationship and to be able to stand strong in that as well. So for me, in my previous relationship, there were so many red flags that I missed, but it was more important for me to be loved and liked and accepted and for her to love me than for me to say no. Because that love and that validation that I received from that relationship was more important than me honoring those deeper truths, those red flags that I saw. And this is where we ignore it, because what's actually more important is for us to live in alignment with what's familiar in our nervous system, which is how those red flags actually make you feel, right? And for me, it was the inconsistent actual emotional unavailability and the trauma that was in this person where she doesn't actually have the capacity to fully choose me. And that's what I was addicted to, because as a little boy, right, the inconsistent love, the disconnected love that I received, that's what was familiar. And that's what I thought love was. And that's the biggest issue, is when we confuse trauma with love. Yeah. And what most people think is love is actually either emotional abuse or trauma, but it's what's familiar for their nervous system based on what they experienced in childhood. So this is how it plays out. And yeah, like I said, it can go one or two ways. It can be the man who hasn't created that separation with his mum, or the complete opposite, where there wasn't that connection to begin with. And this is how, either way, it leaves him disconnected from standing on his own 2 feet, being able to be in tune with his nervous system, to regulate and soothe his own emotions. And in doing so, he either becomes what I just shared there, or he becomes over-dependent on leaning on women for emotional support instead of having men and brothers around him. As I shared before around that initiation, when a boy is taken away from the motherly energy, he learns how to be supported and challenged by men. Because when a man goes to his brothers or his brotherhood or other men for support, it's different energy. When a man goes to a woman for support, he's seeking to be held, typically. When a man goes to men for support, he's not going to be held. He's going to be challenged and supported. They're going to be with him shoulder to shoulder in the problem, in the challenge. They're not going to hold him. They might actually hold him a little bit to love him and support him, but they're not going to allow him to stay there for long. But for me, typically when this is my journey that we're speaking of here, it was going to women for support, and I neglected brotherhood because I hadn't learned how to I didn't want to lean on men. I didn't want to be challenged. I just wanted that little boy was seeking to have his needs met through being held by the feminine, to be soothed by the feminine. So I neglected brotherhood in doing so.
Sometimes, like you said, they're going to call you out on your shit. And you kind of, again, when you know what you need to do and you know your brothers are going to verify that, you're like, I don't need this verified. I already know. I just want to be held because I feel a certain way and I want the nice reassurance from a woman over the harsh reassurance or like the harsh truth from a mate. But it's funny that I'm reading at the moment The Way of the Superior Man, and it talks about in that when the women will kind of test you in a way. And for example, it's like, in the book, it talks about how this man comes home, he's like, I made $1 million today. And then the girl's like, well, did you pick up the milk? And he's like, no, but I made $1 million. And she's like, well, we really need milk tomorrow. And he's like, are you kidding me? I just made $1 million. And it shows you that he needs to not get his happiness out of her reaction to what he's done. He needs to get his happiness from himself and the fact that he just made $1 million. And the milk's just a test to see how he reacts to that. And I guess that comes back to what we're talking about. And I guess what we suffered from at a point where it's like, if the feminine or the woman isn't giving you what you think you need, you can't be happy. And you then react in a negative way and go, well, like, what, as if you don't care for what I'm doing, blah, blah, blah. And they see that as weakness because it's like, well, if all my happiness is built into me, that's way too much pressure. Like, that's the whole idea we talked about earlier, how it's like you need to be your full person, and then that should be reflected into your partner. You don't get all your happiness, all your love, and all your care from that person. Like, that's your job. It's like, I think when people get into relationships, they're like, oh, well, it's your job to keep me happy. And it's like, no, it's your fucking job to keep yourself happy. And then when you're happy, then you build a relationship with someone else who's also happy. But I think we live in such a society where you see couples become so codependent that without each other, they actually don't know how to be themselves. And like you said, and I'm definitely victim to this, where I'll find a girl, be myself, will fall in love because she sees who I am and I'm being me. I'm going after my goals. I got my passion. I got my friends. I got all of this. Like, you're a full package. Then over time, you slowly, like you said, drift away. You stop doing your passions as much. You stop hanging out with your friends as much. You stop being who you truly are. And this was something I had a real aha moment recently, where I kind of look back at past relationships where it's like, I'll meet a girl, I'll drop so many of the things that make me me. They'll see that I'm not me anymore because I'm not doing the things that fill me up and make me feel good. So then I change. And then because I change, the girl consciously or subconsciously pulls away. And then when they pull away, I chase them. And then when you're getting no one wants to get chased. So then I chase them and then the whole relationship falls apart. And I guess more recently, I've been more self-aware of, oh shit, I'm doing this to myself. And it's always, it's like everyone blames their partner for pulling away or for acting out in certain ways. And it's like, just when you flip the script and go, well, what am I doing? Am I showing up for me? Am I loving me? Am I putting the energy into me? And once you realize, like, no, I'm not doing any of that. Like, why would someone love me if I'm not giving myself the love I need to be me? Mm-hmm. And once you have that aha reflection moment of like, okay, I need to go into a because I love being in a relationship. I love having another person, but like you said, when it's your number one priority, you need to learn to balance that. So it's like you're both getting all the love you deserve, not just one person, and then hoping they'll reflect that onto you. So then you're like, because like, have you ever felt like you've been in a relationship where you're almost using them as a drug? It's like you're down when you're not with them or on it, or like, sounds better when you say it like that. When you're not with them, it's like, oh, I'm a bit sad, a bit depressed. I don't know what to do. And then you get them. It's like this big dopamine hit. You're like, oh, I'm happy again. And then they'll go do whatever they're doing, go to work or whatever. And then you're down again. It's like you're literally using women as like a substance to keep up your happiness. It's like you're an addict to love.
Yeah. It's that oxygen mask I was speaking about. Yeah. You get that quick hit and it's like, oh, well, yes, I can breathe again, right? And beneath that's the boy, right? The boy who is seeking to be held or seeking to be validated or for his self-worth to be dictated by a woman's availability to love him or not. Instead of him just loving him, being solid in his own frame and being able to choose. There's a big difference between needing a relationship or needing a partner and being able to choose. That was one massive wake-up call that I had throughout my healing journey. Was for the longest time it was I needed it like oxygen, right? Because I was still seeking to suck oxygen through this mask that was on my face, but it was actually the unprocessed, the wounds of that little boy, instead of me being able to actually breathe on my own. And a woman she'll feel that. So, what you shared before about, a man coming home, I made $1 million, but it's like, hey, did you get the milk? It's women just want to know and feel safe that you have the capacity emotionally to support her and a potential family. That and her innate instincts, that's what she mostly desires. And when she can feel that a man is consciously or unconsciously seeking to have his needs met through her, or that she's fulfilling some need within him where he's not actually okay on his own, she starts to lose respect in him. But the respect that she's actually losing in him over time is she's slowly feeling more unsafe. She can't rely or depend on this man emotionally because he's so dependent on her emotionally. He's relying on her. And
It's a lot of pressure.
yeah, it is a lot of pressure. Yeah. And then typically what will happen is she'll either start disrespecting him in the sense of like criticism or pulling away or, lacking sex, intimacy. And then he starts to feel even more disrespected, and then he needs the oxygen even more, and he becomes even...
You start chasing, man.
Starts chasing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the law of attraction, or when it comes to energy or frequency, like the needing energy is saying that you're not already full within yourself. And like a woman will feel so deeply unsafe when she can feel a man needs her. There's a really powerful book called Wild at Heart, and in that book he speaks about a woman wants to be alongside her king on his mission. She doesn't want to be the mission or the priority. That makes her feel unsafe because she wants to know that he's good on his own. Like he's solid in his own frame. He's got his mission. He's got his purpose. It's something greater than him. It's not me, because I know that he's going to be able to take care of me and the family, right? Because he's actually got his mission, his purpose. He's out there in the world fulfilling what's most true to his heart. And when he's not doing that, she can feel that he's being unintegral with his heart, and she can't trust that. She struggles to trust that. So yeah, and all of this, stems from that little boy within. And for maybe those wondering, like, is there an actual living little child within me? Like, because in a child work, I didn't know anything about that. I was like, what does that even mean? And how does that even show up? So a lot of things we've spoken about are the unprocessed wounds of this little boy. So trauma is an incomplete process of emotion. And as a little boy, when you don't, or girl, but I mostly work with men, so boy, when we don't have the safe space to actually process and complete the process of emotion in that moment, or if it's overwhelming over a long period of time, or if it's actually emotional abuse that you think is love, right? We develop this sense of emotional trauma where this energy stays stuck in the body because we don't know what to do with it. It hasn't been role modeled to us how to actually process these feelings, right? Because we haven't had healthy representations of people who are actually in tune with their emotional experience, are processing their emotions, or creating a safe space for you to actually know that all of you is welcome and you can feel and process your emotions and you're safe to do so, right? When we don't have that, we hold on to those emotions. We store it in our body, which is trauma. Now, when we don't have the safety in childhood to be ourselves, it's more important for us to survive. So it's more important for us to be loved, liked, accepted, to fit in, to be validated, right, than for us to be ourselves. And this is where we start forming and building this identity based on the foundation of shame that there's something wrong with me. I'm broken. There's something wrong with me, and I need to be and become whoever I need to be in order to get my needs met. I'm not worthy of love. I must be and become whoever I need to be in order to receive love. So this is when the nice guy comes out and he's seeking to have his needs met through a relationship, through a woman, through his clients, right? For example, like he's a slave to his clients because if he doesn't serve them right, then they might leave him, right? That fear of abandonment. So he becomes the nicest guy in the world, and he will do anything to avoid conflict in the fear of people leaving him or abandoning him, right? Now, when we don't have that safety in childhood to be ourselves, we start forming and creating this identity, and then we have real life evidence and proof throughout our entire life that this is who we are. And as humans, it's more important for us to stay in alignment and in congruent with what we believe to be true about ourselves, our identity.
The devil you know, not the devil you don't know.
Yeah. So that emotional unavailability or inconsistency that I experienced in my childhood, that became my identity. I'm not worthy of consistent love. So I would unconsciously be attracted to women who are emotionally unavailable, who could reflect back to me that exact core belief, because that's more important to me than me being myself. And this is how the boy shows up. Or in creating success and achieving, as boys, like we look up to our dad like he's our hero. And when we don't get the support and the love and the approval that we need from him, that you've got what it takes, you're a man, and if he's in tune and in touch with his emotional experience, right, and you have that emotional connection with him, when we don't receive that, we spend our whole life trying to actually seek that from him. So for me, creating success was actually, or achieving was actually unconsciously the little boy seeking to go, hey, dad, look at me, look at me, look at me. Do I have what it takes yet? And this is where men are driven from that place where they create success, they build a massive successful company, they sell it, and they go, it wasn't it. Because it never was about that. It was actually the little boy within that was still seeking the approval from his dad. Now, the power is with all of this, is when we can go back into those parts of ourselves. That little boy, so there's 5 stages of development in childhood. And the work I do is I help men go into every single one of those stages and reclaim that little boy. And in every one of those stages, there's core strengths that we actually gain in those stages when we have our core developmental needs met. There's key strengths. For example, in infancy, the strength that we gain is healthy attachment, is secure attachment. When we don't get our dependency needs met, it then becomes insecure attachment or avoidant attachment, right? So this is where the disconnect happens in relationship, and our dependency needs start showing up in that relationship, right? So there's the 5 core stages, and every stage that there's a strength to be reclaimed. And going in there and creating safety for that little boy in every single part of those stages is connecting in with those parts of us today that still feel, let's say, the anxiousness, and beneath that is, the fear of being alone, the fear of abandonment. It's actually going back into that little boy where he felt alone or felt abandoned, and actually creating safety for him to be himself. And we can do that. We don't physically go back in time and connect with this little boy. We actually connect with the parts of us today that still feel unlovable or unacceptable, that we've deemed unacceptable. We can actually connect with those parts and create safety for those parts within us today. And it's crazy. Like I'll take grown men through a process where they actually take on the energy of this little boy, and you'll see them, they'll just be like sobbing, right? Because that energy stays stuck and trapped in the body. And then we're actually living unconsciously from this energy, from this level of consciousness. In the book, the King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, if you've read that before.
No, I've been recommended. I haven't read that yet.
The first chapter, they speak about boy psychology to man psychology. Until a man actually progresses past these developmental stages, his psychology actually stays at the level of that little boy. So most men are walking around today as grown adult children, right? This little boy that's actually controlling the ship. And my whole thing is healing the boy and awakening the man. Is when we create safety for that little boy to actually put down the controls and not have to try and control our life. It's like he finally feels safe enough to relax, and the man can come through. And that's the power. That's the power of this work. And it's about going in and loving and accepting all parts of us, welcoming all parts of us, all of these parts that we once deemed unacceptable or shameful. When that little boy, for me, for example, when that love was inconsistent, were making me machines. I made it mean that there's something wrong with me. I'm not lovable. Immediately, I shamed myself, and I become shame-based. My whole life becomes based on this foundation of shame, where it's, I don't make a mistake, I am the mistake. Or I don't fuck up, I am the fuck up. It's like this internalized shame. What's really important is when we go into these parts of us and we heal this little boy, we create separation between the awakened man and the boy. So we can recognize when the boy's showing up, and we can actually hold ourselves as the man in that. And we create the discernment between the mistake or the fuck up and there's nothing wrong with me, because all of me is welcome, right? I am lovable. I'm enough at my core. I know that, and I made a mistake because I am human. But for men with the wounded inner boy, it's yeah, I'm a fuck up. Or, yeah, see, like, no matter how hard I try, it's just never good enough for her. See, it's just like this constant needing to find evidence and proof that you're broken, there's something wrong with you, you're not good enough. And that's how the boy, really shows up in both dynamics. But what starts to happen is when we go back in time and actually connect in with those parts of us, that little boy, we start to begin to see the thread between what happened back then and what's happening right now. And we start seeing the thread of how that's played out our entire freaking life. And then we start realizing, holy shit, my whole life has been built on the foundation of this shame. Every single thing that I've done has been based on the need to prove, the need to, like for me, everything I did was in the hopes of being seen by a woman, right? Or creating some sort of success so people would be like proud of me. My whole life was built on that. And when I came back to this, I asked myself the question, well, then who the fuck am I? Because my life's been built on the foundation of all of this. And that's the most beautiful question we can start asking ourselves. When we go in there, we start creating safety for that little boy to be himself. We can start coming back to who he was fucking born to be on this earth, not taught or shaped to be based on his unprocessed trauma that he hasn't healed yet. Because we're all placed on this earth for a sole purpose. And if I'm not sure if you're listening to this or not, if you believe that, but I believe that, like 1 in 400 trillion chances of us being born, and the fact that we're here today, like there's a reason we're here. And if we don't go back and heal those parts that are getting in our way of, actually fulfilling that purpose, then if you don't actually know who you are at your core, how are you supposed to be all of who you are and go out there and fulfill that purpose in the world? So that's the power of this work. And, that's why I'm so passionate about this. And like we've spoken about how it shows up and hopefully through this, people can just start actually maybe getting some awareness of like, oh shit, okay, I see how that plays out for me. I see how it might be showing up for me right now. And so many different ways.
Who do you believe you are?
Whole and complete. I believe that I am love at my core. That when I started asking this question, I started coming back to who I was as a little boy before I decided to be another way. And that was curious. That was passionate. I was deeply passionate about asking questions, sharing, to the point where it was actually too much for people. They couldn't handle it. So that was a big thing for me. It was like, you're either too much or you're not enough. That was my core wound. So I for example, like I wouldn't go after the things that I wanted to go after because it was like, no, I'm not good enough. Or I would experience situations where I was too much. Yeah. So coming back to who I was before, who I am at my core, it's this passionate, curious, just open-hearted, loving boy that just wants to give and serve and see people happy. That's who I am at my core, because that's who I was before life tainted me, before that little boy went through emotional roller coaster of being in the middle of his mum and dad's divorce and separation, where he experienced this deep abandonment and betrayal. That's who I was before, and that's who I am at my core. Yeah.
Yeah. Who are you before the world twists and turns you down a path that you actually didn't want to go down, but you felt like you had to do it for a survival mechanism to fit in and be seen and be heard? It's like, who are you before all that? Because I always ask people at the end of the podcast, like, how do you want to be remembered? And they've got to kind of think about it. And I'm like, how do you show up every day? How do you show up to your friends, family, co-workers, whoever it is? Like, that's how you're going to get remembered. It shouldn't be like this, oh, where do I was like, no, who are you as a person? How do you show up? Like, how do you treat people? How do you treat yourself? Like, that's how people remember you. So I always find it interesting when I ask that, and I see people put a lot of thought into it. And it's like, it should be like almost like who I am, like what I do and how I show up, because that's how you're going to be remembered. We talked about a lot then about shame and how you can hold on to shame, and subconsciously it's going to be limiting you to a place in your life where you'll never get past. And I'm going to tell a little bit like my story about around shame, which I knew I felt it at the time, but you touched on it before about taking your own life. And when I've talked about this a lot on the podcast, so I'm very open about it,
Yeah.
but I think I was 11 or 12 trying to end my life. And it was a way of, I was just a lonely kid, grew up on a farm, didn't have friends, loving family, but just very isolated, very lonely, very depressed at the time, wasn't that smart, didn't have a lot going for me. And when it happened, my life changed. I ended up getting taken out of the school I was in, made new friends, found a sport. My life changed completely. Started to build my identity around being an athlete, and then that helped me just be seen and all this. But I always held shame that I tried that, and especially the fact that like my life from the outside seemed really good. So it was almost like, well, my life's really good. So like, why would you try and do that if everyone else thinks your life looks good, when obviously no one sees inside your head and how you're feeling and what you actually feel like you need. But I carried this shame with me for so long that I'd try to do this thing, and it almost got worse because I became so happy. And then it was almost this like, I didn't want to tell people because I was like so happy, and it's almost this like I didn't want to share that. And then it was so funny, man. I had this 24th birthday party and had this weird out of body experience where it changed my whole perspective of my life and what I wanted and where I wanted to go. And it's the whole reason I moved up here. It was like from that point I was like, I need to change everything. And I came up the Gold Coast and I actually went on a podcast and I shared the whole suicide thing. And the outpouring of like people going, oh my God, I never would have thought that. You're such a happy person. You're all of these things. And it made me realize that like, because I wanted to share it for the fact that you can go from such a negative point and show people that you can go to the best you've ever felt in your entire life. It was like the pendulum had swung back, and I had this need to share. And then as soon as I put it out there to the world, that shame evaporated instantly. And I knew from that happening that I was never going to be able to be as happy as I possibly could while I was hanging on to that. And you don't know how heavy something is until you take it off. And it was when I took it off, I went, oh my God, why the fuck was I carrying that around? And I think there's so many people that either won't forgive someone for something they've done, are holding on to shame for something they've done, or have some kind of issue in their life that they're just carrying with them everywhere they go. And they have to understand that they have the power to take that off at any point. And I'm sure in some occasions it's probably going to hurt a lot. It's going to open up, like you said, old wounds that they're going to have to go through. But you're better off opening that up, feeling it properly, and then moving on and living your life to the best it can possibly be lived. But you have to kind of dive into the pain of that trauma. But I was going to ask, because you mentioned this, did you feel shame around a similar thing that you went through in your life?
My whole life was shame. Underneath it all, I thought I was broken. There was something wrong with me. My whole life was built on the foundation of shame, and then a compensation to try and compensate for that there's something broken and wrong with me. And then any tiny little instant where it would be reflected back to me that I either made a mistake, it was that internalized, see, you're broken. See, there's something wrong with you. And it was this sense of, with shame, we typically do anything to avoid feeling it. And for me, it was punishing myself. It was actually inflicting pain on myself, because it's like, you're broken, there's something wrong with you, like you deserve to be punished. And how that played out was destroying myself in the gym, like training hard until like I was like crawling out of the fucking gym most days, or working really hard, or like purposely like making myself suffer for the sake of it, like sabotaging, making things a lot harder for myself than they needed to be, because I believed in my core that I needed to suffer because who I am is not okay. I'm broken. There's something wrong with me. So yeah, look, with shame, until we shine light on those shadows, they will have control over us. And the only way to shine light on that is to be seen in the shame. And for people to, there's healthy shame, which brings the humanness to us. We need healthy shame that creates limits for us as humans. There's a healthy level of shame. But then there's toxic shame. And toxic shame is what I was speaking of there is something wrong with me, I'm broken. And it's the avoidance of that. It's doing anything to avoid feeling that or being seen in that, right? Is that something, did you feel that or experience that with that shame?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt just like I didn't want to share it because I felt shame of people be like, why would you do that? Like, why would you do that? Where when I shared it, it was the polar opposite of like, oh, you've helped me see that I can make my life better.
Yep.
But I think I always like to talk from a point of a solution. And I never want to just share like, oh, my life is fucking here and this isn't going right and no one loves me and blah, 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 if I don't have a solution attached to it, or at least a series of events you could probably put yourself in to make that situation better. I like to talk from a place of I was there and now I'm here. And I know obviously sometimes it's good to talk from that point of like a low point, but I don't want to be someone that's just like, this sucks, the life shit, all of this without a solution attached. Otherwise, I feel like you're just fucking whinging, as bad as that sounds. I like to obviously feel the emotions I need to feel, go through the shit, find out tools to help myself, and then in turn other people go through the same similar thing, and then put that out there.
Yeah.
So you actually can be useful.
Yep. Yeah. And that's something that played out for me around, I wouldn't share it, unless I had a solution for it. It was going to be useful or whatnot. But beneath that was actually the boy within me that felt that if I actually was just to express my emotions, I'd be dismissed. So I have to at least have a solution ready, right? Or if I share my emotions, I'd be like, stop being a sook, stop being a pussy. Like, it was that kind of energy. It was like, wake up, like, you're fine. A complete dismissal of how it was that I was actually feeling. That's what I experienced as a boy. And then
Do you reckon that's from your dad or you?
Yes, and then the lack of emotional attunement between my parents, as in the lack of connection that they had with their own emotional experience, right? So they just, like, for example, if you don't know what's going on in your emotional body, how the fuck are you supposed to know what's going on in someone else? And you lack that attunement with someone. So this is the example of like when a man's disconnected from his heart or his emotions, he has no idea what his partner's actually feeling, and he sees a woman's words as he sees it as words, but it's actually, when the feminine's bringing something to you, it's beyond words. There's an emotional experience here, and it's typically there's a lot more beneath it than just the words. And a man won't be able to feel that and be in tune with that if he's disconnected from his own emotions, right? So that was, so for the most part, that emotional disconnection is what created that emotional disconnection to me. Whereas a sense of like, I can't, okay, it's not okay for me to share this. I will just solve it on my own. And I'll just, do it. I don't have a safe space to share my emotions, so I'll hold them in, right? A way to express trauma is to speak about it. And when we don't have that safety to speak about it, we hold on to it and we try and solve it ourselves. And there's that shame of like, okay, well, it must not be okay what I'm feeling, because when I bring it up, it's dismissed, or it's not okay to speak about this, right? And then we internalize that shame, and then we keep our mouth shut. And then 11-year-old boy doesn't know what to do with this build-up emotion, this disconnect between how he's actually feeling or a place to actually share it. And then, he gets to the end of the road like that, where
I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I like about doing this podcast is being open about shit that I've gone through and how it's made me feel, and then hoping on the other side of that, whoever's listening to this in their car and wherever it is, they can feel it and go, oh, I feel the same way. I've been through the same thing. And when you can relate to other people and then also be someone living a life that seems quite desirable, I'm like, well, he went there, he felt that, he's living a good life, I can as well. And it's like the whole he can do it, I can do it mentality. And I think especially being in Australia and how many men take their own life to suicide it's ridiculous. I think it's the biggest killer of men under 40. And just talking, I was at a wedding recently on the weekend, and one of my step uncle, he works in like FIFO, and he was telling me that during COVID, when you could obviously work still, but it was harder to get back and forth and obviously going interstate, he said there was weeks where there was like 11 people a week committing suicide. And even now, like, the numbers are still quite high in that, like, you go away, you're away for a month, you come back, your girlfriend's seeing someone else, or she's cheated on you, or she doesn't, like, she's not getting that love that she wants. And he says it's so common. And he even was saying that his relationship went through a real struggle because you're being away so much. And it's like those men, and not to stereotype, but a lot of the men that work those jobs aren't as in touch with their emotions and don't know how to regulate them and don't know how to actually get what they feel across. So I'm hoping from doing podcasts like this, and a lot of other people that I know that do them, is when you can kind of open up about your emotions and how you feel, then in turn you can actually take that into your relationship and actually build something that is not going to result in you taking your own life or ending the relationship or just it all blowing up in your face, because you can go, oh shit, I can use some tools that I heard this person talk about and actually bring them into my life and make everything better. So that's probably one of the biggest, I guess, for your work in this podcast, is just helping others to understand themselves better.
Yeah, and what, like, I can't express it enough, is brotherhood for men, is having that brotherhood there. As I shared before, there's a level between there's a level to which how much you can actually bring your emotional stuff to your woman, to your partner, before she starts struggling to trust you in feeling like this man doesn't have himself together. If he doesn't have himself, how's he supposed to hold me? And the power of brotherhood, men having other men to actually share this stuff with and to emotionally dump and be held in that and challenged and supported to become better. Not just go and have a beer and chat about it. There's more than just awareness. Mental health awareness is great, but it's just awareness. The first step to transformation is awareness, and that's it. But real transformation is actually going into why those behaviors or why those patterns are even there to begin with. Why those fucking thoughts are even there to begin with, right? As in the development of the brain, the emotional brain is the first brain to develop, then the logical, analytical thinking brain. So the emotional body, the emotional brain, is actually what signals our thinking. And for a man, let's just say, based on what you experience, what I experience, like that disconnect between emotions of, I don't know what to do with these. I haven't been shown how to actually process them or regulate them, or I didn't have a safe space to actually feel them growing up. We hold on to that our entire life. And then, as I shared before, like my life being built on the foundation of shame, that perpetuates over time. And it eventually gets to a breaking point where it's like, this damn wall is going to break at some point. And for me, I was lucky that my damn wall broke when I was 21, 22 years old, where I almost took my own life. And there was more to it than that. There was a decision that was made that, I'm no longer going to put my happiness second. It's going to be my number one priority. And what I didn't realize I was doing in that moment was actually listening to my heart. The second decision that I made was, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to spend as much time as I can around the people who are living the life that I want to live, that deeply inspire me. Those ones who are connected to themselves emotionally, have beautiful, thriving relationships, successful businesses, and success in every way. I'm going to devote my life to spending time and being around those people. That was the second decision I made. And then that's where the brotherhood started coming in. I started surrounding myself with more conscious men who were leaders of their own life, or were on the path of being a leader in their own life. And in doing so, like, those are the men that I was supported and challenged by, that have raised me up. And like, I'm 27 years old. I've created what I've created. I lead hundreds of men all over the world. And I've built this pretty, in its own way, successful company in the men's workspace, which is a pretty hard thing to do because of that, because of the men that I have behind me. It's like, imagine you're a warrior and you're going to battle, and you have 100 men behind you that you deeply trust, like deeply fucking trust, that they've got your back no matter what. Right? You're running into battle, like you don't care, like you're going head first in because you know that you're supported. You've got these men behind you. But what most men do is they don't have those men behind them. They just have their woman, their partner, right? And they're not attacking the world. Like in the book, The Way of the Superior Man, he speaks about penetrating the world. Like the way that a man penetrates the world, goes out there, leads his life, leads in the world should be directly how he also then shows up that way with his woman as well. But a man can only lead in that way if he's got those other men around him to support him and challenge him in leading that way. Not just his partner, not just his woman. And typically when a man doesn't have a woman who's been disconnected from his emotions, he needs to try and soothe in some way. And because he's disconnected from his emotions and he hasn't learned how to soothe and regulate his nervous system, he turns to habits that don't serve him. Porn, sex, drugs, alcohol, partying on the weekend. Like, those are all ways that he regulates and soothes his nervous system for a moment. But they don't serve him whatsoever. What he's actually seeking is connection to the feminine. Because all of those things that he's doing is actually the nourishment, right? It's not really nourishment, but what he's seeking is the nourishment and is the getting into his heart, getting into his body. Like when a man goes and has a beer, right? He starts moving, he starts dancing, gets into his body, and he has so much fun. And he unfortunately needs those habits in order for him to actually receive and be in the feminine. That's the feminine. Being in your body, being connected to your heart, being in receiving, like being nourished and nurtured, and having a fresh ice cold beer is the feminine. But unfortunately, most men, that's their way to regulate and self-soothe their nervous system. And when they don't have that, and if they have a woman, it's typically that way. Or they just turn to their business and just keep working even harder. So yeah, speaking out, depression, suicide, all of these things, it's like, cool, mental health awareness is great, but what's actually happening? Where's the deep transformational work happening? And then that's where I come in. That's where let's start healing that little boy within that's not leading his life, where the little boy, the wounded boy seeking to have his survival needs met through the world is the one who's actually at the control. But because he's so disconnected, he's just going fucking wild. Yeah.
Do you find your age ever plays a factor in when you're helping these CEOs and people high up in business? Or obviously once you start the course, they kind of go, okay, you know what you're talking about?
It's never been a problem. Yeah, it's never been a problem because of the place to which I'm able to take them and the trust and safety that I'm able to create with them, even on our initial call, in a way that, like, I've had men on a call with me, never met them before. They're in another country, mega successful, TV personalities, and they just break down and start crying because they finally have a safe space to be held by a man. It's very different to going to a woman. When you're seen and held by a man, it's, yeah, very, very different. And yeah, look, that's just how it's been. It's, I haven't had anyone bring that up. I think it's a felt sense of depth. I can't take anyone where I haven't been within myself yet. And I won't do that because that's a lack of embodiment. But for the most part, I've met myself pretty fucking deep. It was only, it was not long ago where, I was also at rock bottom again. And in that, and I have no doubt that I'll could hit another rock bottom. I don't know.
I don't think you should look at rock bottom as being a bad thing.
It's
though.
not. It's great.
It's a turning point, man.
Yeah.
Like most of the time when something's just kind of not all right, that's when you're really fucked.
Yeah.
Because it's like the bath isn't too cold, so I'm not going to get out. I'm just going to sit in it until the world passes by. And I ended up, oh, fuck, I just sat in the bath for the last however long. And that's an analogy for like relationships. Like if someone says like, how's your relationship? It's like, it's not too bad. You're probably going to stay in it.
Yeah.
But I saw this thing the other day and it's like your relationship should feel like you got hit by fucking lightning. It should excite you every single day. It should make you go, oh my God, I feel so much in this. And that should be good, bad, indifferent. Like in a relationship, you should feel all the emotions, but you should know how to regulate them and understand them. It's like, it's for someone to say, oh, we never fight or there's never any issues or anything. Like, I don't think that's healthy because it's like for example, the only woman that could really upset me was my mum. And she could only really upset me because I loved her so much. And then when you're in these relationships with a woman and they actually like really fire you up, like there's some positives in that if you know how to deal with it. But if someone doesn't really annoy you or make you feel good, but you're just with them because you've been with them for however long and it's kind of working and you get your fix and the sex isn't too bad, like, fuck that, man. Like, fuck that. Like, that's not the kind of relationship I'd want to be in. I want to be in a relationship where I'm challenged, where I feel emotions, good and bad, and that we actually build together and work out to make something great instead of just getting by. Like, that feels like the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
What you were talked about recently, you went over and lived in Bali for a bit, and you're also going through a breakup at that same time. How was that to process, and how is it also when you're giving relationship advice to people, but then does it almost come back on you when your relationship is failing and does that kind of put you in a state, because I've been feeling this more and more because I've been giving relationship advice, but then also I'm not in a healthy relationship, so you almost feel like a bit of an imposter in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Like it's like I still think everything I'm saying is very valid.
Yep.
But at the same time, if someone goes, "Well, where's your beautiful wife or girlfriend?" you go, "Well, I haven't got there yet."
Yeah.
But
so, me and my ex-partner, so we had a beautiful relationship together. It was really, really good, and then it was really, really shit. And that's because the deeper the love, right? It's like, let's just say like the frequency of love is up here. Anything that's not at the same frequency as that is going to rise up as well. So the fear is going to be just as great. The deeper the love, like the deeper the fear that's typically there. There's more at stake, right? And for the most part, like I'm sure you've probably experienced, there's like those one or two relationships that it means so much to you that it brings up everything. And in doing so, yeah, it definitely brought up a lot. But we actually, things were amazing for a long time. And we actually, we were teaching relationships. And I know more about relationships now going through that than I did back then, right? It's like, it's part of the journey. I don't specifically teach the ins and outs of relationship. Like, that's not my thing of like, the dynamics of communication and whatnot. I don't teach that because I teach being in relationship with yourself. When a man has that little boy that's playing out and he's disconnected from his own emotional experience, like he's fucked in relationship. My whole thing is I speak to men that are in relationship that are experiencing that. But I'm not teaching them how to have a beautiful, thriving relationship. I know that's actually a byproduct of a man being integrated. But now I'm in a place within myself where I don't need a relationship. I'm able to choose. And in doing so, it's the most beautiful, empowering thing ever. It's this sense of I don't need a woman to make me feel, to fill this emptiness or this void within me anymore. It's this, fuck yeah, I have a kick-ass life. I have so much fun. I have the coolest people around me. And I get to choose a beautiful woman to be welcomed into that. When someone comes along that ticks the boxes for me, it's like, and I don't need it as well. But it's this openness to when that happens, and I know it will happen, right? Yes, we're biologically wired to be in relationship. I love love. I love being in relationships as well. That I know it's going to be a healthy thing because I'm able to choose, and I'm able to choose because I choose someone who I can feel and know is also deeply connected to themselves. And anyone who's not, it's like, okay, cool. Well, that's okay. I don't need you. Like I'll choose someone who can be fully available to meet me, as much as I'm willing to meet you, where I'm not too much, right? All of me is welcome and you're able to love me in it all. And you're not going to fucking leave when things get tough. Because that's what happened. Right? I was living in Bali. Things got tough. Things got challenging. And that person left because they couldn't handle it. And they weren't devoted to that depth, right? And I can't say anything's good or bad. Like, I'll never say that, oh, it sucked that she left or it's good that she left. It just was because it was just part of my journey. I had to go through that initiation because I've been in the personal development space for close to a decade now. I'd learned all the information, right? I'd understood it. That's the three levels of learning. You can know something, right? You can then understand it. So you can read the books, you can go to the events, you can do the certifications, you can do all of the shit. But the third one is embodiment. If you haven't had the actual lived experience, you can't fucking take people there. So I've spent all of these years learning the information, and then that experience I was sharing with you that happened well over a year ago was the initiation for me to actually fully fucking experience my deepest core fear, which was the fear of being abandoned, right? This person that was emotionally unavailable, that was playing the role of what I experienced as a boy, is that emotional unavailability. I lost myself in that. And in doing so, it got too much for this person, and she left. And she left me with an empty villa in Bali. We were living there. Things were great. Had an amazing business. Things were awesome. I'm leading high-achieving men. Like I'm doing some pretty cool things in the world. And then this happens. My whole world was just turned upside down. But what it taught me was I had to go through this. What it taught me was there's more than just knowing information and knowing about things and understanding them and learning them. There's a whole different thing when it's an embodied experience.
You got to feel it.
You got to feel it. And this was really where I got to put all of my knowledge, my tools, my information, and my network, the people that were around me to support me, to hold me through me actually feeling it and facing it. And so for about 8 months, I would say week in, week out, sometimes daily, it was just, I would do my work, then I'd go out on the grass and feel. I'd go inside, do my work, go out on the grass and feel. And it was just this constant process of just fucking facing myself time and time and time again. And healing this little boy, holding this little boy, not just learning about it anymore, actually embodying it and experiencing it. And that's why I have the confidence to take men to that depth, because in that moment in Bali, when she left, my greatest fear, right, to our nervous system, abandonment as a child, if we get abandoned, we're going to die. So that's why we become whoever we need to be to get our survival needs met, because the other option is death, because if someone's not looking after me, I'm going to die. So when that's trapped energy stuck in the body, I'm a 25-year-old, right? 25, 26-year-old in Bali, and this person that I'm so devoted to, like, this is the mountain I'm fucking committed to dying on. Like, this is my woman. Like, I choose you time and time and time again, right? Leaves. My nervous system just got abandoned by the person that I love most, which was my deepest fear based on, my unmet dependency needs in childhood. My nervous system thought it was dying. So my body shut down, and I was having full body shakes for about 4 days. And I remember one of the nights, it was, I remember a full bodied decision of, I can either kill myself right now and end this, because this is just unbearable and I can't see my life going anywhere past this. The second option was, this is going to be the catalyst that changes fucking everything. My entire life is going to change from this point onwards, and I'm going to go all in on being the absolute best version of myself, and I'm going to make sure that no man ever experiences what I just experienced or gets to the point where they have to experience this. And I made that decision, and ever since then, it's my mission and my work is first of all my embodied experience, and then being able to take men there and then helping them build this connection to themselves, so it doesn't have to get to that point. It doesn't have to get to the pain and desperation. They can also change from a place of leadership and inspiration. So yeah, bro, it's a fucking journey.
I think it's looking at that, like the pain's so useful. Like, it's such a useful tool to use if you understand it and what you can do with it. And like you said, you felt it and you're like, I don't want anyone else to feel this, and I don't want to feel this again. So like, you've got to change. So it's like when the people look at pain as being the worst thing, and everyone wants to run away from it and not use it. But it's like, man, pain is so useful, and it can help you so much. And it should be like, it should represent like the point of change. Like, I went through this much pain and I never want to do it again. Yeah. But you have to feel it and understand it to go through that. Like, and then it's looking at it, like, it's appreciating things through pain. Like, I mentioned briefly, like, I had a really bad injury last year, spinal cord injury, and I still have some like little niggles and pains from it. And I can look at that as like, poor me, boo-hoo, I'm not the same as I was. Or I can look at it like how bad it could have been. Like the pain that, like, I can walk, I can feel my legs, I can do all these things. And like, yeah, there's a bit of pain, but it's a reminder of what I get to do, not what I like, not the pain as being a bad thing. It's like you can flip anything how you want it. So I go from, oh fuck, like I've got this little bit of pain, boo-hoo, poor me. It's like, no, you get to walk still.
Yeah.
You get to feel your body. You get to use this. And like
Yeah.
relating that back to your story of like going through that and then going, okay, I got that pain and now look how much better my life's got because I actually used it for a positive thing instead of just going, fucking poor me, my life's over kind of thing.
Yeah.
Do you find as well, because you talk about a lot about brotherhood there,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously having people in your life to help you out of those situations, I fully agree as well. But sometimes we distract ourselves with other people, whether it be friends, family, other girls, whatever it may be, to then not feel what we actually have to feel. So how important do you think as well is it, because you said you had those, were you alone for a while when you're in the villa in Bali as well?
Oh yeah. Yeah. No one. No one. Morgan, that was in here the other day, he had just left. So I couldn't even, because we were in Bali together. He just left. So I was legit on my own for, in that villa.
Do you see the benefit of that speeding up the process a lot though? Because you didn't have distractions to try and pull you out of it. It's like, I've just got to feel, because that's what I related to when I went over to Bali, and it was a similar situation. How the person I was seeing, even though we weren't technically together, we'd been seeing each other for a long period of time. And it was like the point of it being over. And when I was at home, I was kind of dealing with it quite well because I was distracted, had my business, had my friends, had the gym, had all this other stuff. And I was like, it was in my head a little bit. And I was like, I kind of need to go on a holiday. Like I need to get away. I need to clear my mind. And I got to Bali and I went there solo, and polar opposite of clearing my mind. It was like, you're alone by yourself a lot, which sucks, but it also makes that process of getting over someone a lot quicker because you just feel all of it because there's no distractions.
Yeah.
And it sucks. But like I said before, with opening wounds, personally, this is my own experience. People could be different. You're better off feeling everything really quickly and getting over it, moving on with your life, than drawing it out for weeks, months, years. And I think a lot of people do that. They feel it now and again, but they don't sit in it. And they don't feel it properly. And this can be with people passing away, with relationships ending, with like whatever it may be. If you have a trauma or pain attached, I'm like, sit in it, man. Sit in it and feel all of it, and then shed it. Because then that comes back to like when you like cry about something, like you're letting the emotion out of your body, like you're releasing it. And everyone gets taught now that like, oh, you're a pussy if you cry or whatever. I'm like, man, it lets go of some shit that you don't want in your body if you get it out there, and then you feel like, oh my God, the weight's been lifted again, and you can actually be your true self.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you as well, how do you find now with the dating scene? I'm going to say, I feel like the Gold Coast is almost a different one altogether to the rest of Australia, but like, how do you view, again, with obviously deal with a lot of men, and the idea of this like casual, quick dating scene, and how impactful do you reckon that can have as a negative and a positive on men?
I fucking hate it, because most men are doing it to distract from feeling. So the very first thing I did after that experience in Bali was like, cool, all right. And I live my life in seasons, because that's what life is. Like, you look at nature goes through seasons, and there's seasons for a purpose, right? There's seasons for a purpose because seasons actually promote growth in nature. So understanding, I celebrate the shit of what you shared before around being in the pit. I celebrate it. I celebrate men who, when they're in the pit, I'm like, fuck yeah, bro, you're in it. Because by you facing this and being with the emotion fully of what's here for you, the gifts on the other side of this are not only going to change your life, but are going to change everyone else's life that has contact with you forever. Yeah.
Yeah, so appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's that, I call it like my life vest, and it's the whole idea of when you're going through something really hard or harsh or traumatic, that has an equal positive attached to it. And as soon as you build that into your mindset of whenever something's really bad and creates a lot of negative emotions, it has the positive attached to it. And every time I think that, like, it's just the whole idea is it gets better. Keep going. It gets better. Keep going. And once that is built into you, you realize that every hard thing you're ever going to go through has light at the end of the tunnel. And you don't know how long that's going to take to get there, but knowing that you will get there, it takes the edge off. It takes the edge off for the, because it's like, oh, this sucks, but it gets better.
The issue becomes is when we judge feelings as good or bad.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Whatever connection you have, universe, God, consciousness, whatever. Its number one soul purpose, our number one soul purpose, and its number one soul purpose is us to grow and expand. You look at nature. Nature is just always growing and expanding, and we are part of nature. And what that shows us is there will be things placed in front of us to actually support the evolution and growth of our soul. So when I realized this, I was like, holy shit. So if I am living in alignment with what lights me up, because what fulfills you and lights you up it's kind of like the carrot of the soul. It's like, that's the direction, go that way. What lights you up and fulfills you, go that way, because that's where you're supposed to go, right? When we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, that is where we'll be most happy and successful. And when I realized that, I was like, holy shit, like everything is actually, the universe is actually working with me. It's not working against me. So all of these things that happen that are perceived bad are actually in support of me becoming the absolute best version of myself. And by me distracting myself from that, I'm limiting my potential. And me getting to my deathbed and realizing the person I could have been is the worst thing ever. So coming back to what you asked before around, like the casual dating scene, for the most part, it's when a man doesn't know what he wants, he's not fucking clear on what he wants, he doesn't do casual. He doesn't do casual dating. As I shared before, we go through seasons. And I feel that it's really important that a man goes through his season of being super intentional with his sexual energy and directing it towards discovering that soul mission and purpose and going all in on that. And having a feminine cleanse.
It's a balance of going all in on someone, but then also the timing and distance you give them from working on yourself, so they don't feel like you're all in. Because everyone's like, you hear it all the time, and girls are like, I want him to be all in and all this. I'm like, yeah, but you don't want that straight away. Like that's not a second, third date kind of thing. That's like okay, because like you said, you want him to be on his mission, and you want to see him on his mission, and you want to see him obviously giving you love and affection and care. But you want to make sure that his eyes are on the prize that he wants to obtain. And you guys can obviously bounce off each other and keep growing and going after that mission. And obviously he can help you on yours, you can help him on his. But they want to see you going after what you want. And it's so funny, man, because I raced mountain bikes overseas for 11 years. And during that time, I always had a girlfriend or something going on. The 1 year I didn't was 2019. I had my best season. Yeah. And I just think back all the time where my energy was so spread between like staying up late trying to message them or being on calls or wanting to be home or missing them. And then the year I went away and didn't have that, I was so much more focused in on where I was. I was so much more present. I was so much more driven. And I wish I could go back and live that life again with what I know now and know that as much as I did have great relationships and I did enjoy the girls I was with when I was with them, and I don't want to get rid of that, I just wish I could go back into that with the mindset of they're going to be fine at home doing them. I'm overseas competing and chasing my dream and my goal. Put energy into that because you're here now. Like stop spreading your energy so wide that nothing actually gets pretty much any of it. Yeah. It's like you're trying to put energy into someone across the other side of the world. You're trying to put a bit of energy into your job. You're trying to put a bit of energy into your friend, and you get spread so thin that everyone just gets this little bit of you. Yeah. Where it's like, okay, I'm here now. I'm in Europe now. I'm going to focus into my team, the people around me, my job, my goal, my vision, my body. That's it. Yep. And then when you're back home, be present with them again. Yep. Because it's like they say, it's like we said before, as much as even they'll be like, oh, I want you to talk to me all the time. I want you to call me all the time. Then if you do that, there's almost a bit of a turn off when it's like, oh, you're not going. And this can be subconscious as well. It's like, oh, you're doing everything I want, but you're not going after what you want. I'm not as attracted to that anymore. I'm going to pull away. So it's, for any guys listening to this, it's like, find what you want to do and go after it with everything you have. Yep. And if the right person or girl is in your life, she will support that and want you to go after that. Yep. and like still obviously show her love and care and don't just ignore her, but don't take the eye off what you want.
Yeah.
And don't just be in that state of, oh, I've got some affection and dopamine and love, that fuck, the rest of my life can just be in that, because that won't keep going. That'll end, and people get resentful over that quite quickly.
Yeah. And the part to that as well is that when you have that unhealed little boy within you living in survival, it's actually him having that woman by his side all the time, having women in his corner, having those distractions is actually his survival. Yeah. So he no matter how much he knows this, it doesn't fucking matter, because to avoid that loneliness that he would feel, he would need to distract himself in some way, unless he has the tools and resources to be able to face those emotions as we just spoke about, right? So it's like, I get men to do solo retreats on their own. Go be in your own energy. Go be in your own space. Put your phone away. Turn your phone off and fucking feel that loneliness. Not just feel it, but be intentional and feel it from a place of being connected to that little boy who didn't receive the love that he needed as a child. Because here's the thing with energy is, yes, we could just go all in and focus it on our business. Unless we're actually doing something with that unprocessed wound, that wound's going to show up somewhere else. It's just a redirection of that energy. It's just going to redirect somewhere else. And then you get into a relationship and you lose yourself again, but now you have this successful business. Or you have this successful business and you don't have the emotional capacity to hold this woman or lead her as well. It's like at some point it'll
like whack-a-mole.
It'll come up. Yeah. Until you actually deal with that little boy within that feels alone and needs a big thing for me was scrolling social media, right? I'm like, cool, okay, no women, no porn, none of this. I'm good. I'm just going to go all in my business. Cool. Went all in on my business, and that energy had to go somewhere. And it was, as soon as that loneliness would come up within me, that typically I would have a woman to fulfill that within me, or I could go and watch porn or something. It was like, fuck, I don't have that thing. What am I going to do with this emotion? Scroll.
Yeah.
For hours, just watching shit that's not serving me whatsoever. Now, and see, I still feel it today. Like it's still, and if any coach or someone who's embodied in this work ever says that they don't have triggers or these wounds still don't come up, they're fucking lying to you, and I can guarantee you that. It still comes up, but it's having the tools and resources to deal with what's coming up. So for example, like being down here on the Gold Coast by myself, like down here doing all these podcasts, seeing all these people, then going back to an apartment by myself, yeah, a bit of loneliness comes up. I felt that and I was like, oh, interesting, that loneliness is there, cool. I'm not going to sit on my phone and scroll. I'm going to do a quick breathwork session and fully be with this loneliness. And what happened was, typically these emotions just want our presence. They want to be acknowledged. And as soon as I was like, oh, I can feel the loneliness, it was like, oh, it's actually gone now. All I wanted was to just be acknowledged, to know that it's like, okay, there's labeling the emotion is actually a really powerful tool. It's just labeling, oh, I'm feeling lonely. Oh, okay, just bring some acceptance to it. Cool. Awesome. What does this loneliness need from me right now? Probably not scrolling social media or turning to something to avoid it. It's probably wanting some self-connection, right? That it's wanting to seek from something outside of me. It's like, cool, how can I give that to myself? Awesome. Let's have a bath. Let's breathe, right? Let's nourish myself with the feminine energy that's not a woman or a bad habit that's not going to serve me. Let's turn to some real feminine nourishment, which is having a bath or laying down, doing a breathwork session, a meditation, and receiving from the great feminine, like the divine feminine, not the physical form of the feminine that most men have the representation of, which is those things I mentioned previously.
But like we said, it's care.
Yeah.
Care for yourself. I feel like I need something. It's like, yeah, you need to care for yourself. You need to love yourself. You need to look after yourself. Man, it's so funny you talk about that, like the triggers and the vices I think we all have that we fall back into so easily. Like I know for myself, it's like, okay, I feel like I need something. And being up here, it's so easy to get all of that, like attention from people, like especially as we said with like casual dating and dating apps and stuff. It's like you can open, and even just social media. It's like it's not hard to see people. It's not hard to connect with people. It's not hard to try and meet up with people. But I think you ask yourself the why behind that and why you're doing it, and then you kind of start to figure yourself out. You're like, I probably don't need that now. But then this is the bit. As soon as you said, like you said, this where it's like, as soon as you don't need it, that's when you get it. And that is the like, oh man, it's so funny. I know when I'm like, all right, I'm doing me and I'm going to do me right. And every single time I do that and I start giving out this energy or start being this person, I'm just generally happy. I'm having a good time. I don't feel like I need anyone or anything. Every single time I get into that state of mind or that way of being, someone always pops up. And then I fully shoot myself in the foot, and this is like the little boy coming back out, because then I get excited and I put too much emotion into something that isn't anything. And then, of course, that I've just added all this emotion into something that isn't anything yet. And I get in my own head, I overanalyze, and I wreck the whole situation because I stopped being me. And it happened quite recently, and it happened quite recently, and it was very condensed down because I was in a state of like, I'm just going to say what I want and where I'm at. And I was very straightforward, like more straightforward and upfront than I probably ever have been with a person. And they were kind of the same. And I was like, whoa, this is moving very quickly, but it feels right. So I'm going to go with it. But then because of that, my emotions got ahead of where I was actually at. And then when I didn't feel like it was getting quite reciprocated, I felt the energy shift, and then I was like, well, I need to show up differently because this person seems to be showing up differently. Overanalyzed, and I fucked the whole thing. Yeah. And I remember thinking back, I was like, that is such little boy shit. Yeah. Like that is like, boo-hoo, poor me. I wanted to do this. You didn't want to put emotions. Then because of that, act differently in the situation and wreck the whole thing. And I saw the whole thing play out. And you know, I feel like I'm pretty self-aware of myself. And I watched this whole thing back in my head, and I was like, man, like I know where the direction I should have gone, and I wish I went that way. But again, it comes back to the pain teacher and putting yourself through different levels of pain, whether it be physical or emotional, and then understanding, okay, well, that's not what we're going to do next time. And then figuring out what you actually need, and that's not a good or a bad thing. That's just what happened, and it is what it is, and going to the next one with a few more tools and understanding of, okay, this is what I actually need and how I need to show up without getting carried away. Yeah.
But looking at the mind, the subconscious mind and the conscious mind. Conscious mind is only about 5%. The subconscious mind is the 95% of us, right? So think of it this way. It's like what you just explained there. It's like, imagine you're sitting on top of an elephant and you're walking along and you're like, let's go left. Let's go left. Let's go left. Consciously, like you're the 5%. Sitting on top, let's go left, let's go left. If the elephant sees what's familiar to it, what's safe for the elephant, it's going to go fucking right. No matter how much you go, let's go left, let's go left, let's go left. So what I'm speaking about here is until that little boy feels safe within his own nervous system, no matter how conscious you are of these behaviors, these traits of this relationship that unfolded this way, the elephant's going to go to what it's known of, what's been familiar, which is chaos, disconnection, losing yourself in relationships, and all of the shit that happens that we've been speaking of, right? So, it's going in and facing yourself. Yeah, facing that little boy, holding that little boy. And it's beautiful because having that awareness. Look, I think getting into relationships, if you have a big reaction in your body of like massive excitement and let's say the butterflies, that's a fucking red flag.
You don't think that's a good thing?
I feel it's a red flag. The fact your body's having such a physical reaction to this person is telling me that there's a trigger of some sort here. I feel love should feel that there will be obviously there'll be the attraction, but when it's like this, I can't stop thinking about this person. This person makes me feel nervous, and right, that's like the recipe of a man losing himself to a woman.
Yeah, but this is the thing. I don't want to lose that because I think that's like one of the best bits, and I like when I make someone else nervous because it's like I find from personal experience when I'm nervous about something, it means I'm invested and I care.
Yep.
So I relate those back to
Yes.
those things. So when someone's like, oh, I'm nervous around you, I'm like, you care about this.
Mm.
But then again, I just think it's to feel it, but understand what you feel and then how you react to those feelings is
Yep.
where I go wrong. I go, I'm excited. This feels great. All of me, fuck, too much.
Yep.
You know
From what place is it coming from? Is that what I'm getting at? The excitement's going to be natural. It's going to be there, like, especially when it comes to polarity, right? Sexual attraction, like, it's going to be there. But it's from what place is this coming from? Is this the excitement of like, yes, finally I have someone who can reflect back to me that I'm worthy and I'm good enough? So for me, it was, I got in a relationship with this woman that was far more successful than me. And the fact that she loved me enough to want to be in a relationship with me was like, holy shit, I'm finally worthy.
More successful in what level though?
In business.
Yeah, so then it's just
Yeah.
like you're putting business value above
Yep.
everything else.
Yeah, but that's the thing. We have the rose-colored lenses on. Like, we don't care. It's like we just see all the great things. And putting someone... So, only seeing all the great things in someone is not good. That's when we start pedestaling people. So, my mentor always shares with me, trying to live a one-sided life in a two-sided reality is a source of all suffering. When we only see the good in people, we put them on a pedestal. We look up to them. But what happens is when we see both sides, we see the good and the bad, because we live in a life of polarity, of duality. There's two sides to everything. Left, right, up, down, hot, cold, masculine and feminine, male, female, right? The sun, the moon. We live in a reality of polarity. And when we only look at the one side and we neglect the other side, right? We either, if we look at all the great things, we put them on a pedestal. We look up to them. And if a man's looking up to a woman, eventually she begins looking down on him. It starts losing respect in him, right? And typically, if he's looking up to her because he's not allowing himself to see the downfalls, because he doesn't want to admit the downfalls, because he's so infatuated by this person, right? That it's the greatest thing that's ever happened to him, because it's like he's finally getting his needs met for survival, because survival's more important, right? And then if he was to just see the other side, the shit stuff, right, then he looks down on him, right? When we look down on people, it's like we care less about them. It's caring less, and looking up at people is we're being careful. It's like, oh, I don't want to fuck things up because I got to be really careful. But when we see both sides, we see the good and the bad, we bring them back into balance and harmony with us. We see them for who they are, not for the split perception of reality that we're seeing them through. We get to see them in that integration. Integration is the wholeness, is the fullness of that's what integration is. To be an integrated man is to love all parts of yourself. All the amazing, incredible, this is what I call the golden shadow and the dark shadow. The dark shadow is the shame, the fear, the guilt, the sadness, all of that, right? We fully own that. We shine light on that, right? And accept and welcome all of those parts within us. And then there's the golden shadow, the beautiful, incredible, powerful traits that we hold, right? It's seeing both of those. When we neglect the good, right, we stay stuck in the shadow. When we neglect the shadow, we become egotistical and we just live in this light and we disregard, and then typically it doesn't end well. So bringing it back to that, we must see both sides. And integration means wholeness, and wholeness means to see the whole fucking picture, all of it. And if you look up the word healing, healing means wholeness. If you look up the word health, it means wholeness. If you look up the word integrity, it means wholeness. Everything's coming back into whole and into balance, harmony, and symmetry. So this is where it's like what I was speaking about then, when it's this crazy, overwhelming experience that we start looking up and putting them on a pedestal, we're not seeing both sides. And for the most part, when we see the bad stuff and we see some of the good stuff, it's like, this person's boring. There's no fun here. It's like, oh, but there's these things, right? Oh, she does this thing. My first ick, or whatever they call it, right? It's seeing both sides and welcoming it. And then that's when you get to the point where it's like, I can choose this woman. I can fucking choose her for all of who she is. Not for all of the amazing things that I see, but all of it. Every part of her, I choose fully. And for me right now, I'm in a season with the feminine cleanse. So I don't have that in my life, and I'm learning how to build a relationship with the great divine feminine, the nourishment and the soothing of finding that from things like connecting with myself in that way. But for the most part, it's so I can be in that place to fully choose because I've fully chosen me first. And I've come to wholeness within myself. And that's what the integrated man is being whole within yourself. And then you're able to choose. So when you shared before around casual dating, it's like, fuck, man. So many men are out there like casually dating, having sex, fulfilling this void, this emptiness within, distracting themselves. And they're actually creating more disconnect, and they're actually distancing themselves even more over time, and it's actually perpetuating the trauma over time, and they're getting further away from their most powerful integrated self in doing so. So yeah, bringing the duality of seeing both sides. It's the most powerful exercise you can do. I take men through it. It's the work of Dr. John DeMartini, if you've heard of him before. His work is around values, and it's around the polarity and symmetry of life. And what you can do is, if you're highly infatuated by someone, or if you have someone on a pedestal, you list as many as many drawbacks as you possibly can as to all of the downsides of this person, and it'll start bringing them back down in balance. If you look down on someone, write a list, as many as you can, of all the benefits and the amazing things about this person. It brings them back up into balance. We must be able to see the good and bad. So I take men through this process because I work with a lot of men that pedestal their partner and then lose themselves in relationship because they've done that, because they're being careful, they're being the nice guy. Let me people please so you don't, leave me. I help them bring it back into balance through them actually seeing all the downsides of this person. So it's like, okay, they can see the whole picture now, where before they were just seeing the one side. So it's bringing the two sides of reality back into it.
Because I don't want to say one's more important, because obviously it's supposed to be equal, but like you said, it's so important to look at the flaws and accept the flaws and be okay with the flaws and build and grow and make the flaws kind of, obviously there's always going to be some there, but like lessen them over time. But don't just, like say rose colored glasses and look at them as like, everything's perfect, everything's fine. And then all your friends are in your ear like, nah, she sucks. Or like she is whatever she is, good or bad or whatever. So no, I fully get that. I have a few more questions. We wrap this thing up. What do you think your most proud moment in life has been, and what did you get out of it?
The most proud moment that the first thing that comes to mind is the most recent one that I experienced, which really hits, is I was just facilitating a few weeks ago at the Gathering of Men. So it's probably Australia's largest men's event, and I was lead facilitating with some of Australia's biggest leaders in the men's workspace, and it's about 200 men out on the land for about 4 days, just connecting, going through processes and whatnot. And it was taking these men through an experience where they got to, I ran this training, this workshop, this 2-hour workshop around healing the boy and awakening the man, which is my work, because it's been my entire life's journey that I've been able to, I'm so deeply passionate about, and I know it's why I'm here. I'm here to help men step into their power and their leadership so they can fulfill the purpose that they were put here on this earth to do and be in the world. I know that's why I'm here. And through this experience, seeing all of these men holding themselves, crying, and connecting with their little boy within them, every single man there was crying, holding themselves, like literally physically holding themselves, but holding that little boy that's within them. Seeing that and knowing that because I had the willingness to fucking face myself and meet the depth of myself, I get to transform every single one of these men's lives, and the thousands and even millions that I get to moving forward, right? Because of that. Seeing that, it was this moment of like all of these men right in front of me, like learning what it means to hold themselves, to love themselves, to come back to wholeness within themselves, to regulate themselves and not distract, none of it, but to just sit there and fucking hold and feel, to see that and to experience that. And then At the end of the workshop, I said, raise your hands, who here? Because I then took them through a process of holding the boy, awakening the man within them. There's a lot of things that we do, but at the end of it, we go through this process of them stepping into that powerful man that they truly are at their core, and then holding the boy, welcoming the boy in. So he's kind of holding himself through life now. I said, show of hands, who here has or feels and knows that you now know what it feels to be in your fucking power as a man, in your integrated self, in the best version of yourself. And they all raised their hand. They were like, holy shit. This is that's what it feels like to hold myself fully, to feel, to hold that little boy within me that's been controlling the show, that's been running the fucking show, that's been self-sabotaging my relationships, my business, all of it. Within 2 hours, an experience where they could actually hold that part of themselves physically and experience that. That was the proudest moment of my life so far, because my whole life led up to that moment where I was able to create that transformation for all of those men. And I'm grateful enough to be able to do it on a day-to-day basis for all the men that I work with and lead on a weekly basis. But that in person, seeing all of those men experience that and the breakthroughs and transformation, because I faced myself first. Yeah.
It hit.
Yeah.
The next one, sorry, these like last ones are like, we got the quick fire hitting you with them. If you could go back and teach yourself a lesson that you wish you knew when you were younger, what would that lesson be?
All of you is okay and welcome. Keep fucking going. Keep going. You are so loved, and yes, just keep being you. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. Yeah.
Outside of unfulfilled potential, what are you scared of?
Outside of unfulfilled potential.
I say outside of unfulfilled potential because every single person I asked on the podcast is always, and I know you mentioned it before about you don't want to get to your deathbed and know there was more.
Yeah, well, that is it for me, but to take it out of
I got to get different answers now, so I literally tell everyone.
Ask the question again so it lands for me.
What are you scared of?
Man, my life is so revolved around my mission. I'm like, my whole body is like, I'm fucking scared of not helping these men.
But I find that so interesting because you're already helping them. So it's like, how are you scared of something that you're already doing and have done?
Because it's not about them, and it's never really about them, is it? It's what I'm most fearful of is not being good enough.
Yeah, purpose.
Not being good enough or worthy enough or, good enough to fulfill that. But it always comes down to that wound, and I know that wound's there. And here's the thing: we're supposed to be wounded. That's the thing. It makes us who we are. So that what I fear most is not being good enough. Yep.
And the last one I always ask people: when you are dead and gone, we kind of touched on this before. When you are dead and gone, how do you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered as the one who goes first and leads the way and creates a safe space for men to come through and live and lead their lives in the best possible way that they can, in the most fulfilling way possible. So, it's me going first to create and pave that way for them.
Love that.
Yeah.
All right, bro. How do people find you? We'll throw links and stuff in, but is there a certain course or something coming up that's exciting that you want to plug real quick?
Actually, that is, for the first time, I'm actually creating a self-paced program called Heal the Boy, Awaken the Man. Be about an 8-week journey for men to go on to heal and progress through every single stage of development of healing the little boy. So there's that. And Instagram and Facebook, I post content every single day, heaps of value on there. Like you could go on there and get breakthroughs just through reading my content. So jump in there and have a look.
I was going to say that's this thing that kind of triggered this because I saw Morgan obviously shared the video of you guys and your number plates yesterday, and I just saw that, clicked on, and like the second video was reading the caption and I was like, okay, this hits. I can relate to this deeply. So here we are now. And there you go, guys. What Instagram can do.
Yeah, powerful.
All right, epic, bro. Thanks for the chat.
Thanks, bro. Yeah.
That was epic.